My name's Jen Kramer, and for 20 years, I've been building websites and teaching website development and web design. Much of that has been online long before it got fashionable. Back in the old days, I used to build my own websites for teaching. And I've also had an academic career for some period of time. I taught for 10 years at Marlborough College in Vermont in their Master's of Science in Information Technologies Management program. And just wrapping up 9 years at Harvard University's Extension School, where I taught in the digital media program. Knowing a little bit of technical stuff is always helpful when working in the field of learning design. Even though you can be very successful working in learning management systems, clicking the buttons and so forth, having a sense of particularly HTML and CSS will help you a lot in your career. So HTML, hypertext markup, it's the little brackets that look like this that have letters inside of them like P or UL or LI. That is the structure of the web page. And then CSS, cascading style sheets, have to do with how the page looks. It's colors, it's fonts, it's layout, all of that kind of thing. So if you can get a basic understanding of those, and there's lots of places you can go to get that knowledge, like LinkedIn Learning, for example, is a great one, just to get that fundamental basic level, that will help your career tremendously moving forward. Yeah, even in learning management systems like Canvas, for example, where people feel very stuck by the layouts that are provided by the learning management system, having a little bit of code there can spice up your layouts. You can do things that are interesting and different. In tools like Captivate and so forth, understanding programmatic thinking. So when I click this button, students can move in one of two directions depending on certain conditions along the way. So being able to think through that type of flowchart, really, of they're going to start here, they get a choice. If they pick A, they're going this way. If they pick B, they're going this way. How do we bring them back together? That type of linear and programmatic thinking will also help you greatly in your career. And you may find that super helpful, particularly working in things like Captivate, where you have a self-contained type of environment where people are working through a self-contained module. Your web browser runs 3 technologies, and it's run 3 technologies for a really long time, for at least 20, 25 years. And that includes HTML, as I just talked about, CSS, as I just mentioned as well, and JavaScript, which has to do with the anything that moves, generally speaking, anything that changes, anything that loads, and so forth. So what happens in a web type of environment? As you know, there's a server where your website or your course lives, and there's a client. That's the computer that's there in front of you. So when you type in a web address, that goes out into the internet, and you grab the web server, sends back information to your computer. That takes time. Even if you're on a very fast internet connection, it takes time to go back to the server to ask for the information, to get that packaged and send it back to you. One of the things that JavaScript does really well is it makes all of those clicks happen so-called behind the scenes. And it's not, technically speaking, behind the scenes. We have this type of relationship between clients and servers. But what it does do is it makes it feel like things go faster. So if you think about Facebook, for example, it never feels like you have to reload the web page every time you click something. It's very, very smooth and so forth. And that is all being caused now by JavaScript, which has a technology where some of that client server communication can be happening back behind the scenes. So the interface is very, very smooth. What's happening now in the world of web development is that because JavaScript has advanced tremendously, particularly in the last 5 years, we have a lot of people who are coming into the field in an unusual pattern. So in the history of the web prior to about, say, 2015, Most people came in, they learned HTML, then they learned CSS, and then maybe they'd go on to learn JavaScript. Now what we have happening is we have software developers who previously might have learned programming languages that are more suited to desktop applications or mobile applications like Java or C++ or similar types of compiled programming languages. And they are now coming to JavaScript with this computer science background. And they see JavaScript as the primary thing. HTML and CSS, it's completely out of date. It doesn't matter anymore, and so forth. But I'm here to tell you that HTML and CSS is 2/3 of the front-end programming languages that exist. JavaScript is only 1/3. If you thought about a band, if you thought about, I actually have a blog post about this. If you think about a good rock band, HTML and CSS, they're like the drums and the bass guitar and the rhythm guitar. They keep everything going. JavaScript is that lead guitar or the singer who's on top doing all kinds of crazy things. If you isolate that by itself, it's actually not all that interesting. What makes it fun is the interaction of all of these things. So as you move into the world of learning experience design, yeah, JavaScript is important. But as I just described to you, in your case, the important things to know, the tweaks that you can make easily without having to involve your engineering team, typically involve HTML and CSS. And the industry does not recognize it. But I'm here to tell you that this is really, really important and will allow you a lot more freedom from your engineering team. If you are able to do at least a little bit of HTML and CSS on your own, you'll have a lot more flexibility to make what you want. You are enough and you are important as a designer. And working in the world of technology, you will often feel like a second-class citizen because the programmers are clearly the most important people on the team. What you'll find is that of course isn't true at all. Without you, students would not be learning. So my advice to you as you work with programming team, try to learn technology at the 30,000-foot level, just like I just talked to you about clients and servers. By the way, that can be an entire university course about clients and servers and communications between them and protocols and all the rest of that stuff. But if you learn that, like, there's a client, there's a server, they talk to each other over the internet, that is useful information that will help you be able to better communicate with programmers. And there are many other topics that are just like the ones that I've just explained to you, where if you can understand things at a very high level, you'll have more intelligent conversations with the programmers and you'll be able to communicate with them more effectively. Communicating with programmers can be very difficult if you're not a technical person, and so don't feel like it's you. It's a problem throughout the industry, designer-programmer communication, and we can argue that programmers should learn more about design. I think that's absolutely fair, but we can't control what they do. We can only control what you do. So I would encourage you to learn that technology so you can have more effective conversations.